Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to a brand new video here today, and welcome to another F1 2020 game ideas video as we get towards the end of the 2019 season. Of course, naturally, our minds switch to 2020, and during the course of a race weekend as well, things that happen in the real-life race weekend sometimes get the mind thinking of what could be in the F1 game. So we've got 6 more things that we want to see for the F1 2020 game. Some of these are from the comments below of the last video we did, and some of these are actually directly from things that I picked up from the real-life Brazilian Grand Prix that I thought, hang on, that's not in the game at the moment, but it would be kind of cool to have a similar sort of system like that in the game to simulate things that happen in real life. So let's just get into it. So starting off with number 1 would be a tyre warm-up and heating system in the game that's directly related to R&D potentially, because during the race weekend we heard a lot about drivers complaining about tyre heat up, especially with the hard compounded tyre and the mediums as well, depending on what car you're in and what driver was saying it. Of course, one of the main issues that Lando Norris faced and why he actually let Carlos Sainz by in the Grand Prix to eventually obviously let Sainz have that brilliant drive up into what was eventually 3rd place was because Lando Norris put on the hard tyres. They tried to go for a one-stop. He still thinks it was the correct way to go, but simply the McLaren and especially his car with the setup he had just couldn't really make the hard tyre work. He said he had about 2 laps of, decent pace, and then the hard just never switched on, and he didn't have any pace out there compared to other people on medium tyres and the soft tyres. And I just don't think we really get that difference in tyre compound heat up enough in the F1 game right now. You have, yes, differences of certain tyres do feel horrendous around certain circuits. I'm trying to think really off the top of my head, the hard compound around the Bahrain Grand Prix, especially for me, I've never enjoyed that tyre compound on that circuit in particular. But from car to car, you don't sometimes really get to see any difference. There might be, I don't know, there might be some subtle difference in the coding of the F1 game, but you never really see it on show like you sometimes do in real life, where a car just is not quick at all in the race on a certain circuit. A la kind of maybe also McLaren at Mexico, they just lack some pace there with the setup in the race, and so it'd be nice to have that as part of the R&D tree. We have, tyre wear as the chassis part of the R&D, and then you have obviously weight reduction and weight redistribution. I think to have a 4th branch, give you more things to play around with the R&D, is tyre warm-up or tyre heating, I guess you could say, because in Motorsport Manager, if we look at the manager game, the kind of F1, if you will, F1 manager game, they have tyre heating as a thing you can improve your car on. I think take a leaf out of that book and obviously take a leaf out of real life and have that as part of the R&D tree, just to add another layer to the whole system in career mode. Number 2, now this is one of the biggest thumbs up comments from the last video we did, which is pit stop failures, and kind of the example the person gave was McLaren at Mexico. A lot of this is coming off McLaren actually, because a lot of things have happened in real life in recent races that are kind of, not in the actual F1 game, but pit stop failures, we've seen obviously time and time again, especially this year. It seems like, teams are getting also to sub, they're breaking records. Red Bull just did a 1.8 second pit stop, I think it was, at the Brazilian Grand Prix, so the chance to have pit stop failures would be really, really cool. Remember back in the day on F1 2010, there was that system where you manually had to brake for the pit box, and that could also affect your pit stop. If you got it too late, you physically saw the animation of you driving too far and hitting the kind of jackman at the front, and you had to push the car back physically. It'd be great to get animation like that back in the game, animations where the pit crew, the tyre guys, have maybe not got a tyre on properly, and perhaps that kind of manual sense again of, okay, if you get the braking right, you can get a sub 2 second pit stop. If you get it wrong, it's going to be like, or you get it okay, it's like a 2 to 2.5, and if you get it wrong, it's up to like a 3 second pit stop, and just give that player that kind of cutting edge that can make the difference against the AI, and perhaps even online. I don't know if in a league race situation or esports situation that'd be the best thing. Probably remove that in a kind of online competitive sense, but I think for the career mode, for immersion's sake, I think it would be a cool feature to have that in and allow once again kind of more randomness to occur, and other things other than the actual car itself and your driving to affect the Grand Prix, because obviously F1 is a very harsh sport at times, and things outside of the driver's control can affect their race. Number 3, and on the topic of tyres, is going to be more realistic tyre punches. Now, we sort of mentioned this before with the way the tyre actually punches itself and maybe damages the rest of the car, but we're just talking about running over debris, over curbs. We saw obviously at the USA Grand Prix, Vettel had suspension damage for running over a curb, and Leclerc was told to avoid a curb. Now, that has occurred before sometimes with even punches potentially, or just debris of, engineer telling them, okay, avoid this turn, there's debris, someone's crashed. And obviously with the Ferrari incident at Brazilian Grand Prix, that was a very extreme case of, the lightest of love taps, which probably 95% of the time would not have actually caused an accident, did unfortunately cause an accident, and both Ferraris were out of the Grand Prix. So seeing more sensitive tyre punches potentially, or just car damage in general perhaps, is something that I think F1 players would appreciate. Again, as I mentioned though, when it comes to damage, damage or with the cars, you've got to take it with a pinch of salt of that fact that obviously casual players are playing the F1 game. Certain people might not like the fact that they've done a whole 100% race or even 50% race. They spent 30 minutes doing a race. They're in a great position, and then it all goes obviously pear-shaped, and they're out the Grand Prix due to a random puncture of because they just mistakenly ran over debris, or they had a little tap with a teammate, or tap with a rival, and the car punctured. So give the player the setting to say, yeah, I want to sign up for this extreme, the most realistic thing ever. So if something goes wrong, that's my fault. I punctured the car and I'm at the race. But if I want a more casual experience, I can do. And so in that way, if you did sign up for it, it would be able to create moments like we saw maybe at the Brazilian Grand Prix and moments before in previous races gone by, where you do get that kind of shock bit of puncture damage, or slow puncher even. I mean, slow punches, definitely, that's also another thing of having different types of punches, having a actual complete bang, the tires popped, and then the slow puncher, which we've heard sometimes in Grand Prix or in qualifying or practice, where the teams can actually look at the data and they can see the pressure is leaking, so they have to say, oh, we have to come in earlier because we can see this tire is going to fully pop if we just keep on going like that. So also having those differences of different types of tire issues would be great. Number 4 is going to be a friends or nemesis kind of system. Now, this was a really great comment from the last video, and it also plays on what we saw at the Brazilian Grand Prix between Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz. To use the McLaren drivers again, they're both really the whole team was a great example of things that aren't in the F1 game this race weekend. So like I mentioned, Lando Norris let Carlos Sainz through because he just simply did not have pace. He was not ordered to let him through. He just decided, I've got no pace here. He's on the medium tyres. He may as well go through. Made it very easy for him into turn 1, I think it was. And so to have that friends or nemesis system with your teammate potentially, where you can decide if you want to be a friend with them or a nemesis. We got a little bit of a taster of that, of course, with the whole F2 story mode, where you're kind of either friends or a nemesis of Lucas Weber, and do you let him by or not, with that whole turbo situation. But to actually have it in the game, where it's not just a simple case of your teammate's your rival. Yeah, he's your rival permanently, whoever your teammate is. But to actually have a system where you can maybe choose, so like the sportsmanship and showmanship slider, could we maybe have a slider where we see where we sit with our teammate? Are we more of a friend to them, or are we more of an actual rival to them? And so you can build that rapport like Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris have. Or if you're in a championship battle, maybe things boil over and you get more of a feisty thing, like, I don't know, Verstappen v Ricciardo when they're in Red Bull, or even now with Sebastian Vettel and Leclerc, maybe it's more towards the tetchy side of things. Started off as friends, but then the car got more competitive. They're maybe going for race wins and more race podiums, and it goes towards the more kind of tetchy side of things. To have that kind of fluidity and slider of seeing where you are with your teammate, we're much better than just saying they're your rival permanently, because, yeah, we get that, but you can be kind of friendly with your teammate sometimes, depending on the situation, and McLaren's a very good example of that, of course. Number 5, another comment from the previous video, was race positioning ladders in the replay system, and just more kind of UI in the replay system, so you can get a better sense of where the overtakes were, potentially. If you're wanting to watch a replay back of a certain overtake in a Grand Prix, I know I've been there where I want to watch a certain incident, maybe if it was a crazy crash or whatever, but I don't exactly know where it was in the replay camera. I have to kind of fast forward the entire time and just keep a really keen eye out for when the crash was. Whereas if you had a kind of standing timer, a UI ladder on the left-hand side with all the positions, and you could just quickly see, okay, that's when that guy dropped down, he DNF'd, so I can quickly just fast forward to that point, then pause it there, rewind it back, watch it in full, record it, whatever, in my case for a video, or for you guys might maybe just watching it back and just seeing a insane crash, because I know I've been tweeted or Instagram many times about random other incidents that you guys have had on the F1 games, and you guys just like to watch it back because it's sometimes funny. So to have that kind of UI in the replay system would be great. They kind of have that when you spectate an online race, so bringing that system over from the online part of the game to the offline part, to have that in the replay cameras after the race would be great, in terms of just the like I said before, I think a previous point was giving options in the replay system won't take away from the game. It would just give people more options if they want to actually watch stuff back after a great Grand Prix. And finally, number 6, we've talked about having random failures in races, but this weekend, and again, Carlos Sainz and the McLaren car pointed this out very nicely, it'd be great to also have random failures in practice and quali. Actually, not even just McLaren. Pierre Gasly, the man who got second place at the Brazilian Grand Prix, started off the weekend with an engine failure. His engine blew up in smoke, well, not blew up, but went out in smoke in practice, and he had to retire the car in that session. So it'd be great to have random failures in practice and quali that then also affect your engine allocation, making it even more realistic. Right now, yeah, you get some wear in practice and quali, especially if you simulate practice sessions, you get kind of the computer-generated wear, and that obviously affects your engine choice in terms of the columns you've got. You've only got 4 available for certain components and only 3 for certain others, but to to have random failures in practice and quali add to that pressure that you might have in career mode. Yes, it will be very annoying. It will be. I will even admit it. It will be very frustrating if you had a random engine failure in practice and quali and that blew out one of your complete components. But like I said again previously with that first point of the tire punches, F1 is a cruel sport. It happens all the time, you know. Sometimes it's not a fairy tale thing, and sometimes I think the game can definitely be more harsh to you with these random kind of things that are out of the driver's control. And again, give you the option of if you want random failures, you can turn them on. If you don't, you can turn them off. But to, have engine issues like Carlos Sainz had in Q1. Imagine you're getting yourself psyched up. You're ready for qualifying. You're in that zone, and then you're on the out lap or whatever. Or you start your flying lap, and then the engine starts to go, and that's completely change your entire race weekend. You have to change the engine, you start from the back of the grid, you have a free choice of tyres, but now if things have completely changed for the entire race weekend, and things might have changed for your entire season, depending on when that engine failure happened. Obviously, in real life case, for Carlos Sainz, doesn't mean too much, because it's the end of the season, but if it started earlier on in the season, that'll be a big deal to you, because that will completely change your kind of thinking of when you have your allocations, when you take your penalties, maybe later on, for what column you're going to take on the engine parts. And I know I said it was going to be 6 more things we want to see in F1 2020, but I just couldn't not mention this as a bit of a jokey 7th one unofficially. We saw, obviously, the Brazilian Grand Prix, the safety car played a massive role in the race. For F1 2020, I would like to see the safety car kind of actually back and actually, turning up in career modes. I'm on coming up to episode number 70 now of my vanilla F1 2019 career mode, and I've only seen the safety car out, I think 2 whole times. The virtual safety car, maybe a 3rd time on top of that. I know there's a different discrepancy of sometimes if you have a new game save, it brings it, but the safety car comes out a little bit more because since they did a patch perhaps. But if you've already got a current save going and you're multiple seasons in, it is just rather annoying to see in real life a safety car changing a real life race so much for the better and making it so insanely exciting, and then in the game you just never see it. So that's an unofficial 7th jokey one. I've said it before as a joke, I'll say it again just because it is actually quite sad and frustrating every time you see a safety car in real life and you see it makes a massive difference, and knowing that you can never get that in the F1 game because I don't know, the FI just don't want to send it out in the game for whatever reason. So yeah, that's my 7th unofficial jokey one at the end there, but the other 6 stand as actual ones. Hopefully it's just a case of a little tweak in the coding for the safety car. But anyway guys, that has been 6 more F1 2020 game ideas that we want to see in the new F1 game, and probably even the future games, because at this point maybe it's a little bit later in the cycle for when the game's being developed, so perhaps major parts of the game are already locked down for F1 2020. But obviously, like I mentioned, with the end of the season coming, your mind does kind of naturally switch to 2020 from 2019, and also over real life race weekend, things come up like I mentioned, 3 things came up from McLaren that were massive things, oh hang on, that's not in the F1 game at the moment. So always intriguing to me to make these videos, and especially with you guys, you just keep on coming below new ideas that I've not seen before, haven't been mentioned before in the comments. So keep it coming guys. Let me know in the comments below any other new ideas that you haven't heard yet in any of these videos, and comment them down and thumbs up any others you see. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to hit that like button. If you are new around here, do subscribe for weekly full-on content. I'm Aarava. Hope you enjoyed today. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.